As we get ready to get started here, I will remind everybody that we have one last session at noon today, and gonna try to wrap it up as best I can for about 10 or 15 minutes. This long week, kind of recap all the things we've discussed, but then really the most important part about the noon session today is I'm really looking to have a open dialogue back and forth with the industry. We've got questions. I know everyone else has questions, but to really have that panel discussion with everyone to kind of talk through what we can and figure out best ways of communication and path forward over this next 6 months to a year as we continue to go down this journey. We're excited about this state fiscal year, so we'll talk more about that at noon. With that said, I know we're a couple minutes after the hour here, so we'll get started here in just a second. Is there anyone on from NC Lug that wants to kick us off, or I can certainly do so if not? All right. Well, we'll get going. Like I said, NC Lug is glad to put this on. I won't go through their normal spiel that they do with all the housekeeping items, but long story short, we're going to have a good session this morning with Michael Trotter from Division 8. And Michael, thank you so much for doing this. Michael's been very instrumental in helping us out, kind of testing and really practicing using ORD from the division standpoint. But we'll go through the presentation and we'll have some time to discuss afterwards for sure. But with that said, before we jump in, are there any general questions or any housekeeping items before we just turn it over to Michael? All right. Well, we'll get underway. And Michael, with no further ado, I'll turn it over to you to get us going this Friday morning, but really appreciate it. And I will go on silent mute with everything else. But thank you, Michael.
You're welcome to everything. Howdy, my name is Michael Trotter, and I'm with the DDC in Division 8. And I'm here with Michael Ricketts, the DDC engineer. And we're basically the DDC here in Aberdeen. Carthage, we moved last year. I'm here to try to point out a few unique challenges and opportunities that the Division Design and Construct Unit, the DDC, has. I want to point out that this is from my point of view. There are, 14 DDCs in NCDOT. I first did a survey for the DDC unit in 1995 when I was working in location and survey. I started with the DDC in January of 2001. And since I've been here, it's been a rather small DDC with just 2 or 3 people working. In our first project I did when we was here, I had to use a handheld laser Distomat to try to map out old yard boxes on the US 1 to get a list and a map of the ones we had to change. Then we got a survey for location survey for the extension and improvements we were going to do on the ramps on US 1 in Aberdeen. And then we did straight line diagrams for some improvements on the crossovers. As you could guess, we didn't have a lot of money, but I think for the project, but I think we used it wisely. I don't know how every DDC unit works. While ours is small, I know some are quite large and some have had their own survey units and inspectors in the past. I don't think how the DDC work is set in stone, but I think for the most part, all of us work kind of in the same way. They give us a project, tell us how much money we have to do it, and when they want it done. We don't have workspaces like roadway or hydro and location have. We use the same ones that y'all do in the industry. In our division, we have several people who use it. We have the project engineers who review plans with it, us in the DDC who produce plans. In the district office, they do resurfacing plans and they did secondary road plans in the past. The resident engineer's office, they do construction layout, maintenance yard, and some resurfacing plans and road control plans. And pretty much whoever around says they need it and see a point in them having it. And what we do here, one of the nice things about my job is a variety of projects we do. This includes one-page plans, concepts of all sorts, design concepts from LiDAR, plans and layouts using aerial photography, and the list goes on with road alignments, turn lanes, directional crossovers, and roundabouts. They even throw in emergency pipe replacements, building site plans, and riprap buttresses. So pretty much if nobody else is around to do it, they kind of come to us to do it. The work from TIP projects is planned for several years. Just like most TIP projects, we have special requests, and that's what generates most of our work. The range of the projects is just one of the challenges that DDC has with open roads. Also, we do the surveys. We can get it from location, or we will process it ourselves, either from the small district survey offices, or sometimes location will send me what they have if we're in a rush. We do the design of the projects, the corridor modeling and cross sections. With hydro, we do small pipe, but we're very glad to have our hydro unit do our larger projects. Utilities, we've done several water line relocations, sewer relocations, and helped with power pole plans. The large projects we usually contract out. We do erosion control plans for the project. We do pavement marking plans, traffic control plans sometimes, and we put it all together and print it out. This is a long list of things we are going to have to learn how to do on open roads. Some of it, like hydro, we'll let the experts do for us, but we need to know how they do it to make all the plans work in the end, I think. And with this list, we have a varied timetable as well. Most of our projects, luckily, have what you would call a normal unrushed schedule. Others, like safety projects where there's limited scope, funds, and right-of-way needs, they're expecting us to have plans fairly quick. Projects being done by the maintenance yards usually give me a week or two to come up with something, but there are times they need the information in days. And that's a good segue into our pilot project. We picked a simple project for our first open roads and project-wise project, straightforward, guardrail project, one alignment, widen the shoulder, put on guardrail, no rush. I'd almost say it was easy. Then we got the survey, and I was informed that it became a maintenance project. That they was going to go out there and do it, so my unrushed schedule turned into a couple of weeks to get the information they needed to go out and lay it out. Another reason we put this project was if we had to, I could do it in SS2. And which was what I finally had to do. There just wasn't enough time for me to work through all the things, but I did learn from the project though. One thing was the guardrail. You can see in the 3D view is just not right. I had taken an old guardrail template used before and changed the feature definitions to open road. Well, it didn't work, and I wasn't too surprised. All right, let's see. Can you see my microstation file?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. This is the pilot project I was working on. And one thing about the guardrail was I was able to come back through and do a little bit of work and make it look a little bit better. But I still didn't know about new ways of doing it. And that's what I was going to try to show you right now. I've gone in and researched and found out that guardrail is now a function of, or can be done with feature definitions. Also, I found out it doesn't quite show up right every time. And there you go. I've already got one on here. And you can see it nicely in the 3D view there. And it's done like any other feature definitions put on there for an element using the geometry tools and the feature definition. I can just do an offset taper, select the alignment I want, and also note that you have several lines here. Make sure you do pick the alignment. I found when I've missed that, it's not gone well. I put it over there where I want. And aha. And I will admit, I forgot to turn that on. That right there is automatically create in 3D. So with that on, now it shows up in the 3D. It won't show up in the cross section until you refresh it. All right. And like everything created with geometry and feature definition, it is dependent upon what you created from. So if you move the alignment, it will move that. And I'm going to demonstrate that. Bill the other day made good points about how the boxes and everything are dependent. And one thing I've learned and we need to keep in mind of is that dependencies come in everything with intelligence on it. So I'm going to do a little demonstration. I make that line dependent to the alignment. Again, I want the alignment and not the crown line. And the dependencies are even more complicated than that, that you use the snaps. Like I want midpoint. And now that is a rule to that. All right. And show a little demonstration. And it's going to go in there. And as soon as it finishes opening. These up. Arc. I just do it the old-fashioned way. I'm not trying to get a good movement, just enough to show how it works. Let it refresh. Well, I moved it. Obviously, didn't like it. So, but you can see how the guardrail did move with it. And that's the thing to keep in mind. If you don't get it all put together right, like I didn't, you won't have results like you're expecting. And it didn't like me moving that the way I did. I'll give you another little movie I made. Again, Bill was talking about how the boxes move with the alignment. I had a file that I put a lot of stuff on just to see how it all worked. And I'd gone in there and I sort of before and after. Most of these boxes aren't put on there correctly. I was trying different things with it. But I'd gone in there, kind of before and after pictures. I moved the alignment over. This is when you first open the alignment. When you move the L alignment, everything that's referenced to it, you have to go back and go through the entire list of everything that from that L alignment down. Like your own Y alignment, you have to go through there, let that update. So you see it moves to the Y line automatically after it updates. You have my design file where I did some drawing in there. You see I did the edge of paint or edge of travel way. All that didn't quite come in right where I've done that. So you see I didn't do things quite right. It worked. And you can see when I first opened the corridor modeling file, everything is still where it was originally. Refresh the screen and it comes back to where it's supposed to. And as you can see, I still have a couple places where it didn't work. Either I didn't do those right. And now with the hydro file, you can see some of the stuff moved, some didn't. Some of that was from, well, a little bit farther back than I meant to. Some of that was from I didn't put in correctly. Some of it was from where I've crashed this file so much, it's just a little unstable in places. But you can see how it moved. Even there where I did a little hydro ditch and tied it to the cut lines in my corridor modeling, it moved dynamically with that. And like I said, I found out that you have to go through your whole list of stuff. Anything tied to your L line, like a Y line, you have to open that, go through your corridor modeling and have that update. If you skip that and say go straight to the hydro, I'm going to show this where it shows everything kind of moving along with the ditches and everything. And that little hydro ditch I was talking about. All right, what I had done when I was playing with all this, I had put together the ditches and everything, and I had moved my alignment a little bit. And when I moved my alignment, I forgot to go to my corridor modeling file and open that, let that update. And so when I went to my hydro file first, everything kind of moved around weirdly. You can see here, even though I didn't change my alignment very much, all my boxes pretty much lost their tie that I did have associated with the alignment. The other ones I don't think I did. Like I said, I tried a whole different bunch of stuff to see what would work or how it worked. Those that were tied to the alignment lost their alignment and rotated. So that's where I learned you have to go through each file in order that you've done them. And that kind of brings us to what we can do with open roads and kind of when we're going to it, I think. That right now, we said before, we're just trying to make paper plans out of it, just like we're doing now. Yeah, stick with that idea. I had made this file again where I had pretty much threw everything on there, including the kitchen sink, tried to show my people and a little workshop what we're kind of working toward and how all this works together. I put some hydro on there, put some erosion, put some utilities on there that I could. Just a mishmash of everything, and all of it did not work correctly. But you can see here, it did work good enough to give, I think, a decent picture of how all this looks when we finally get everything put together in a good way. I sort of faked a water line in here to show where it would go. You have the boxes here, and you have the pipes going through the boxes here. So not only can you see it in the cross sections, but you can see it in the 3D. Rotate it around and see what's crossing and what's going to each other. And there are also programs I understand. I haven't tried them, but we'll do the automatic crossline detections like they were talking in the other presentation. So that's what we're sort of working toward, is to have everything on one plan, I believe. Although I think that's still a little way down, but that did not work. All right. That is one problem when you have something that's busy, is just clicking on the right thing. Sometimes helpful just to get out of the way. And you see in the cross section, the pipe and the water line I had put in there shows up. And as you go through it, that everything shows up without having to be put in the template. And that's the big thing. Some stuff like the road there, that's from the template, but the pipes, those come from the 3D. Just like the guardrail did in the other example I gave you. And it makes everything easier. Makes it look nice on the cross section. I think make it easier to build in the future. And Jeff, that ends my presentation, I believe.
Michael, that was fantastic. I really appreciate you driving us through that.
Thank you. I was a little tongue tied there a little bit.
Oh, you did fantastic. No, that's, I know, again, as we all are learning how to use the software and working through it, I certainly appreciate all the testing and work that you put to it, because obviously you're getting very adept at obviously navigating through the screens and working through it and understanding some of the challenging areas as well as the ones that work pretty easily. So I really do appreciate it, Michael.
Thank you.
For the slide that Michael has up on the screen, again, just to reiterate, I know we're doing a lot of internal work at the DOT of testing and training and piloting the software, but really our hope is really to figure out the best way to have that multi-prong approach to working with our external partners and PEFs. The website listed there at the top is certainly where we're going to continue to post our current information. We're trying to add links to certain training opportunities for our PEFs, as well as any kind of guidance or manuals we develop, as well as time frames and anything you need to know around the ORD implementation initiative. So I would suggest that you visit that website frequently and certainly reach out with questions. If you'll scroll to the next slide, Michael.
All right.
Just this one, and the spelling's there. The I is in initiative. That's been the ongoing thing all week. But that is the email address that we're looking to have the industry reach out with any questions, thoughts, guidance, comments, anything we can do to collaborate with the industry is what we're looking to do, because we're obviously all collectively figuring this out at the same time. We have some answers, the industry has some answers, and collectively we want to figure out the best path forward for the NCDOT to serve our citizens here in North Carolina. With that said, like I said, again, fantastic presentation, Michael. Going to open it up for questions. Certainly, Michael's on to address them, myself as well. We do have Ethan Schwartz on, who is our embedded Bentley ORD expert advisor. So looking to have a good conversation this morning if there are any questions. And if not, like I said, we can certainly adjourn here when we're done this morning, and we'll get together back at noon today to wrap things up and have another opportunity to discuss questions. But with that said, I'll pause and open it up for anyone on the call. And feel free to put it in the chat or just take yourself off mute and fire away if you got any questions.
Michael, this is Tim Merrill. I wanted to ask you, because of your unique viewpoint, what would you think about how long it's going to take for your consultants and your other field offices to learn what you've learned with these dependencies and everything? Because we're looking at doing the training for a particular survey. I'm interested in seeing and hearing from you what you think the learning curve is going to be like and what's the best way to solve it.
Well, I think once you get into it, you start seeing simple dependencies, like what I try to do with just the two lines tied together. Once you understand the simple dependencies, and then you learn that everything else is attached to it. Learning curve, I can't say, I don't think it's going to be that long. To me, having everything graphically makes it a little bit easier in a way than Geopack, where you had to have all the points set up and then go back and do everything. So graphically, I think it's going to make things a little bit easier. So the only way I can say about the learning curve, like I said, I think once you actually start seeing the little stuff, I think people will understand it very quickly. And once you understand that everything that has a geometry and has a feature definition has a rule, I think once they learn that, I don't think there's going to be that big of a problem. Does that sound about right to you, you think?
Oh yeah, no, I'm, like I say, I'm just more interested in hearing from people such as you. Like I
Yeah.
particularly am centered around the survey part.
Yes.
And there's some things like we're, bringing in 3D pipes and stuff automatically, and the deliverable is a terrain model today. Well, actually today I think they're still delivering a TIN file. But the thing is, in the future is for us to submit a single file. And I didn't know what that meant to the end users like yourself when you guys jump in and start using the stuff that is created inside the specific disciplines of Century Center, and you get them out there and put them in the real world, how much of an impact those things are and how long it takes you to learn where they're coming from.
When I talked to you about starting with the terrain file, what location gave me in the other one, that was actually a terrain file. And they didn't give me a TIN file for that. It was a terrain file, and it worked very well. And that's something else. Now, when you talk about dependencies, I'll take back something. That's one problem that may be a little bit harder for everyone to grasp going down the line, is that everything is dependent, starting with your terrain file all the way through your corridor. And that's going to be one thing that's going to have to be sort of learned, that every file is really dependent upon itself. The small dependencies are easier to understand, but I think possibly get into the larger dependencies, the learning curve on that may be a little bit longer. or we might find more problems as we go along with it. Did I get long-winded on that one?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. No, and Tim, great question. Thank you for bringing that up, Tim. And Michael, as always, very knowledgeable response. And again, as far as that learning curve, Tim, I know we're all trying to figure that out as well. But I think to Michael's point, one of the biggest humps to get over is just to really get into the software. And as we continue to move from more of a kind of academic theoretical into the practical and the logistics of people actually using it for production work, I think they'll find the answers pretty readily at that point. But that is the challenge. Thank you for that, Michael. And Vaseem, I saw you put in the chat, specifically you wrote, what is the approach for Division DDC on working on projects and project-wise? And I know we're still developing that, and I know that obviously divisions are using project-wise, getting out of the gate. But any thoughts on that, Michael, as far as the approach for the divisions using project-wise?
Well, we've sort of talked about before that with the dependencies the way they are, we pretty much have to use project-wise. And we're looking to that. And I've tested some stuff on project-wise, and I'm looking forward, like I said, the managed workspace to see how that works. Because I think that'll make things a lot easier than when I tried to work with this project on project-wise.
Yeah, no, agreed.
And I'm trying to get the word out more because project-wise has sort of been the untalked about thing in the last couple of years, even though we've supposed to been using it. And that's going to be something that everyone has to get used to, that it is on project-wise and that we will be using it for about everything.
Yep. And with that said, I know there's some folks on from CAD services as well. And I know we're working very diligently from the CAD services side to get some training prepared and some opportunities for the divisions to learn more about project-wise, et cetera, and then out for the industry as well. So really appreciate that, Michael. Gary, I saw you put in the chat, and the question, Michael, is in your presentation, you talked about referencing to an alignment. How did you do that again? Just looking to kind of see that again from Gary's.
Pretty much anything in open roads that you have an alignment for. Let's draw one on here right fast. That automatically creates a rule in some way, and anything you reference from it, such as guardrail like I had done before. Use the tools in the geometry for like a taper and offset. Say I just want to put it there. And because I made it from that smart element, it is now tied to that smart element. And anything that has intelligence in open roads that you create from, tie to in other ways, such as just even using some microstation tools, then everything becomes a dependence on that smart element. Make sense?
Gary, does that make sense? You can certainly come off mute if you want to talk to me more, Gary.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah. Anything with intelligence has a rule to it. Anything you create from that element is pretty much tied to it by that rule. And anything that you, like I said, even just using the extend to, like that would be a Y line to an L line. That Y line would then be a rule to the L line that when you adjust your L line, all your Y lines would move if you had created it like that.
Are you talking about with the rule, or are you talking about when it's like activated or deactivated?
I'm just going with the activated. I think there are ways you can deactivate this, but I don't really have messed with that. I just leave everything activated. Okay. It's easier kind of to keep that in mind. If you have something special where you can take a rule away from something, possibly you might want to do that. But in general, I would think that I want everything to, if it has a rule to an element, then I want to assume that all the rules are intact and active. I could see special reasons where you would take a rule away, like you might want to leave that guardrail there permanently, even though you need to adjust the alignment for some reason. But in most cases, I would want to leave all my rules so that everything worked the same every time I got into a file.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, And Gary, I mean, Michael, I assume, the test project you showed, I guess you were working on that test project while all the units were probably developing their workspaces. So, just looking at other presentations this week, hydro and all, I wonder, the issues that you had, I wonder if those are probably resolved with the workspaces that are already developed now, and maybe I wonder how hydro would approach that. That issues that you had with the pipes and stuff didn't move when you moved the alignment. I guess that is more for hydro. I guess hydro's question than you probably. I guess
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how far have we moved along with these workspaces now that everybody's working on their workspaces, having at a good point.
Well, I want to point out that most of the stuff I did with the hydro utilities, I skipped a lot of the hard work. I just was going for a nice picture. I was wanting to see more how it worked, because I might do some small projects, but like I said, hydro is going to do our big projects for us. But the one thing is, I think, to know that everyone's going to have to keep in mind that hydro's reference to the corridor, and that whoever does the corridor needs to keep in mind everybody coming behind them is going to be reference to their stuff, the corridor, the alignment, and we're going to have a bigger understanding of what all we do, at least, or some understanding of what everyone does, so that everything comes together right. That sort of answered your question?
Yes, yeah, and I guess it's a good warning. I guess don't sneeze while you have your finger on the mouth while you're doing the corridor.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, the example I gave with the boxes where it lost their reference to the alignment, I only changed that alignment just a few foot in one place, and it still lost the reference at the time. That any change will have some sort of ripple effect downstream.
Got it.
Even the smallest one.
Thank you for
Hey
that.
Jeff, how you doing? I'm on here.
Great.
Also, be sure you save some of these questions for 12 o'clock. Also, if you don't get the question answered, yeah, just bring that point up. And I just wanted to bring out that Michael brought out a couple of really big points. Once it's when you open up OpenRose Designer, it's kind of a shock factor. But once you actually start using the software, you start seeing the benefits real quick. So you kind of get over that hump. And also that everything's connected. All the disciplines are connected now. Everything's connected. So it's, when you do something, it affects other disciplines. So that's always really important. We weren't before.
Yeah, and Brian, thanks for that, and totally agree. And then Brian, did you want to maybe step in to help facilitate some of the chats that are coming in? I think the one from Ashley's the next one.
Yes.
Civil sales.
Oh, you're using civil. Yeah, you're using civil sales.
I've tested them. I didn't really have a place to use them in this one, but I've been testing them with varied results. Right. I've tried the Bentley's examples, and they worked fairly well. You expect they would. I haven't had a chance to go back and see what Oak's done lately. That's one of my things on the list I want to go back and look at. But they look promising, and I have seen them work pretty good, like I said, early testing, where the simple stuff. Right. It's on my list of stuff I need to go back and look at.
Well, some of the useful places are driveways, which can get kind of time consuming, but there's a lot of other,
well, just tying an L line to the Y line would be one of the places I think you use it the most.
Right. T intersections and things of that nature. Yeah. There's some very good tools there. They're fairly simple to use. Not so simple to create or modify. Like you talk about all the rules. You have to be aware of all the rules when you actually modify a civil cell. It may not get the results you're intending to get, but that's just a learning curve.
Yeah, I'd go back to what Tim kind of was talking about earlier. More thing about some things are very easy. The alignment, to me, the vertical profile, they're very intuitive. The civil cells are not quite so intuitive, but I think once you kind of do it a couple of times, you understand how it works, and just doing it a couple of times increases knowledge of how you do it very quickly. They're just getting the practice of figuring out this works a little bit differently than what we've been doing. And that right there is a good thing is a hard part to understand, but once you understand it, you're doing really well, I think.
So we got another question. What routines are you using to make sure critical elements with multiple dependencies aren't accidentally changed or deleted? That's a
very good question, and
That's
something
very
we have
good.
talked about a whole lot. There's not really a lot you can do with that except just don't sneeze while your fingers on the mouse button, like Vaseem said.
You're exactly right. Be sure, you got to be sure you know what you're doing when you click that mouse. There you get when you.
Undo is also very nice too. It does work here where it didn't work in Geopack. That's also good to know. But one thing is with the element selection, you have more power with this than you had in SS2. And that's how you move these elements if you're just trying to move them around like that. Moving them around or moving them up or down.
And once you get further into software, you do realize that you won't want to do this right off the bat. You can turn some rules off on some elements so it won't do that. But you really got to know what you're doing. Do some good training and everything before you start down that path. But this to say, there are some options, but they're advanced options. You might not get the results you want.
That's why I was sort of thinking my intention most time leave the rules on unless you have something special that you want taken out from the rules. That's be there as a static element more than a dynamic element.
Right.
And not just for you, but the people working behind you to wonder why that didn't work when they done that.
Exactly. Or again, just say we're all connected now, so maybe they, that element should have moved, or maybe they wanted it moved or not. Let's see. Do you typically use NCD all workspace or unit specific workspaces? I know Oak has a lot of icons now for each workspace. They're kind of all handled. They're all kind of separated. I know consultants use the all, or just because we tend to jump between disciplines in consulting. But I know NCDOT is not necessarily set up like that.
Well, mostly in open roads, I have been using the NCDOT all. Just since I started out with it, I'm not really seeing much of a time lag between using that or using a single discipline.
Right.
And just because I've got it like right here, I've got it pinned to my start button. That's just what I've just started using and just sort of been going with since I've got into this. It seems to make my stuff a little bit more stable since I am jumping between hydro, roadway, location. And that's been the biggest reason I've been using it, because it does look a little bit more stable when jumping between everything.
Exactly correct. Yes.
But I can see when I get into bigger projects and I'm start getting more the hydro. When I was working on the hydro, I had to be in hydro or utilities to get that to work properly.
Right. So there are instances where you may need to get into that specific discipline and then maybe go back to the all.
Yes.
Also, it's always, this whole week is also, it's been great to get all different perspectives on open roads, designer, open bridge, all these different disciplines, because everyone has their own view of it. And it's been a great experience to get this to listen to everybody's challenges and experiences, and who loves the software, who thinks it's a big deal. You get a different perspective from all the different users. So,
well, one perspective, like me and Tim were talking earlier, we've been around a while. We've gone from InServ to Geopack, from V7 to V8. And while at the time it all seemed very intimidating and very overwhelming, a couple of years later, it was all forgotten about once we start using it and doing it. And I'm hoping this will be the same way.
Exactly correct. I've been using ORD for several years now, and I can tell you, I was right there with everyone else when I first opened it up. I just closed it and said, "What in the world have they done to me now?" And but as I got in there and started doing some training and testing, I started seeing the benefits real quick. And once you see those benefits, you kind of get hooked on the software, as I put it. You see the time savings, you see things that helps you as a designer get things done, and that's where you start seeing the benefits. Any more questions? I'm just talking while I'm seeing if anyone else have a question, trying to spur the conversation. It's been a great presentation. Let's see. One thing we do to protect critical like alignments. You can place a lock on it. Yeah, you can. You can still lock levels, and you can still lock. You can lock the alignment also. Some of those tools are still there that you had before, so you don't have to worry about them getting shifted or deleted. Just remember, everything's connected now, so someone else may need to access that and may not understand what you did. So documentation in the file, or you can actually some kind of memo or something will have to be, hey, the alignment's locked. I can't change the alignment. Well, it's locked. Yes. And trust me, we were just talking about the other day that one of our example in IT was this exact thing, that they actually spent 4 hours trying to figure out why alignment wouldn't modify, and it was locked. It took IT 4 hours to figure that out. So just remember it. Lock alignment is just one example. Just remember, some things you do can have other users may not understand what you did.
Taking notes on scratch levels and locking them with whatever you lock might be a good idea.
Right.
And having stuff in the reference files the way they are, I think, is one reason why Bentley suggests that. That way we're not accidentally doing something that we'll have one alignment to mess up at a time.
That's correct. Let's say, I know everybody's got a lot of questions about the NCDOT training modules. I'm sure Jeff may speak to that as well, but that's a good question for everyone. I mean, not for this group, but he can chime in on the training modules if he wants.
Yeah, and we'll touch more about that at noon. Certainly, Jason Moore has been working very diligently with several firms to get as best training modules we have prepared from the roadway side, and those are forthcoming. But we'll talk more about that at noon, and as well as on our website, there's stuff we're trying to post up, different training options, and certainly from NC Lug, like I said, these different videos, that's why we recorded them. There's some good elements here. But also from Bentley side, I know Ethan Schwartz is on. We're trying to make available some very specific sites within the Bentley Learn world that we found very useful. So we'll talk more about that at noon as well. But yeah, training's the big thing of the next for the foreseeable future. How do we all get up to speed in using this in a very efficient way? So we're getting there. But great question.
Then NC Lug will do in-person presentations, in-person conferences just as soon as is allowed. Yep. And we'll definitely work with NCDOT to put that on just like before. But our hands are tied a little bit, but things are looking promising. Maybe for spring of next year or maybe early next year. So, but that's all dependent on if companies are allowing people to travel, if we can get Bentley there in person.
Sure.
There's a lot of moving parts. The venues, things of that nature.
I went ahead and posted the learn.bentley.com link on the chat. You guys are always welcome to go there and look for individual training modules or series of training modules. There's plenty of stuff going on with ORD training at that site.
Right. And a lot of Bentley's presenters have YouTube channels. Definitely visit YouTube because they have some nice little 15-minute small snippets of
Mhm.
maybe just how to use a command or something of that nature that you may not have time to go through an hour presentation, but you do have 15 minutes to look at a command or something you're looking at. It's great, also a great place to go.
I also meant to mention Bentley Communities. That's where I figured out about the guardrail stuff.
Yep. Also a great resource.
Absolutely.
A lot of stuff
More
out there.
searchable.
Right. A lot of stuff out there. So just don't think there's nothing out there. It's been out for a while, so there's a lot of good. Generally, if you search these three places, YouTube, communities, or Bentley Learn, you'll generally find something to help you.
Excellent. Well, Brian,
Don't see any more questions popping up, so we can wrap this up and be sure to attend the presentation at 12. Q&A session, and Jeff will be hosting that. So save your questions. If you think any more questions, be sure to bring them to the next session. Thank you, Michael. That was a great presentation. Really appreciate it.
Welcome, and thank you for having me.
yes.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Michael.
Michael. Thank you, Brian. Thanks, everyone. Great job.
Great job. See you at noon.